Hi Diego, howdy YouTube. Today welcome to the farmhouse.
Well, anyway, hi, I'm Dever. I'm not normally the one that does this. It's usually my dad, Kirk. He's got his master's in physics and he's the owner of the company. But he is currently in California on his way to a conference. So it was going to be me and Bruce. And Bruce is our electrical engineer who does all of our design work. His home flooded with a burst pipe. So here I am. I'll do my best. I've heard it enough times. I should have it memorized. So today we're just going to kind of go over solar, what it is, what you need to know, how it works, things like that. I'll stand over here because I haven't gotten the remote to work the way I want it to. So I'll just go manual. Okay, so this afternoon we're going to talk about, why solar, why are people investing in it, why is it an option, things like that, how it works. Washington has a unique program, so it works a little bit differently here than it would other places, in addition to how does it work on days like today when there's really no direct sunlight, and then how to evaluate your home or your site, the best systems for your goals and budget, how the incentives work, and the advantages of Made in Washington Solar. So this is my dad, Kirk. It's usually him up here. He's kind of smarty pants. People joke that I translate anyway, so I'll do my best. His background is physics. He was a math and science teacher when I was a kid. Then he worked for Intel, and then he decided he'd had enough of Intel and started Southtown Solar after working for a few different other installers, and we're having fun with it. I started working for the company when I was 16. I was bored one weekend, so I decided to go to a trade show to help out. And next thing I know, I'm having so much fun and working weekends. And then I went to college for business and sustainability/environmental science. So just kind of went from there. So I grew up around this. I'm not quite as smart as he is, but I know the gist of it. And then Southtown Solar, founded in 2008. We do it all. We do design, installation, sales, whatever it is you need. We do hot water and PV. PV is photovoltaic, or the electric side of solar. We're going to talk about that mostly tonight. We're a general and electrical contractor, which is actually required in Washington State to install solar. And then our idea behind these workshops, which I very kindly threw my father into, after we'd done them at a few events, the reason we decided to start doing them was because really when it comes down to it, our mission is to educate and to encourage people to really change the way they think about energy. And when we sat down for a little work session to figure out what our mission was, my dad's like, well, we're not just selling it, we're not just making people produce energy. And it was finally a couple of us, well, we're just changing the whole energy package and how we even think about it. So that's why we do these workshops, is because we want to help everyone kind of change the way they think about energy altogether. Solar dictionary, a few key words that we'll talk about today. Watt, which is how you measure a light bulb, just a standard measure of electricity. It's capitalized because it's named after Mr. Watt, I think it's Thomas Watt. The kilowatt, which is 1,000 watts, so 10 100-watt light bulbs is 1,000 watts. And then a kilowatt hour is a measure of that same electricity over time, so how much of that electricity you're actually using. If you think about it, like gallons per minute is kind of the equivalent. And then solar photovoltaic is solar electric, which is what produces electricity. The panels are measured in wattage. A lot of the time people ask, how many panels do I need for my house? Well, what wattage of panel, what square footage do you have available, and we can kind of calculate it based on that. And then solar thermal is solar hot water, which can be used for heat, but in our climate it works better for solar hot water. And just again real quick, hi, I'm Dever. I'm not normally the person that does this, so bear with me, and if you have any questions, let me know. And then why solar? more energy falls from the sun, falls on the earth from the sun in 1 year than we would use in 1 hour than we would use in the entire year. So if you kind of look at it, one of the fun facts I learned in one of my college classes that kind of helped me think outside the box on this is really, when it comes down to it, all of our energy sources here are solar powered. You know, we get our energy from our food, whether you're a meat eater or a vegetable eater, they then get their nutrition from sunlight, photosynthesis, etc., etc. So really, when it comes down to it, all energy somehow traces back to the sun. We're just kind of creating a shortcut, and if you look at it, this fun little image, you'll see that the blue dot is how much all of humanity uses in a year. And the big orange circle, that's actually scaled down for how much potential we have from the sunlight on an annual average. And that's compared to coal, where that's all the coal resources we have on the earth. Uranium, that's all the uranium, and even wind. We could do it, but it might be a little bit more difficult. Solar panels are nice because you can install them almost anywhere. And so that's kind of why we like it as a resource. It'll last billions of years. And then next generation utility grids. This is one of my dad's favorite slides. The idea with solar is we're essentially helping to decentralize the grid. So that's a huge thing for national security. That's a huge thing for just security in general. If you look at what happened after Hurricane Sandy, with the Northeast being completely wiped out, it was because so many substations were damaged. And solar helps to essentially decentralize that and create a bunch of substations and a bunch of energy producers. And so while there are lots of ways to create a global, national, statewide decentralized grid, we're going to be talking about what you can do to kind of help with that and become your own energy producer. So Thomas Edison, 1931, everyone know who Thomas Edison is? Paid attention in school. Okay, so even he back in 1931 was saying that solar is an amazing resource, and he hoped that we would look into it before we run out of our other resources, which is what we're trying to do. Tesla versus Edison, that's my dad's joke. I'll go over that. Puget Sound Energy, which is who most of us have for a utility, they're a great partner for solar. They are participating in all the state incentives. They make it very easy to go solar. They've really simplified the process, lowered the fees. They actually have 100% compliance. Oh, hi Patrick.
Hello.
Patrick's here to help me. How'd the inspection go, by the way?
Passed.
Cool. Puget Sound Energy makes it really easy, and they have a 100% compliance on all their incentives. So that means if someone's missing a piece of paperwork to get an incentive from them, they'll call you or they'll call us to say, hey, we're missing this. They want to give you the incentives. They're really great about it. We really like them when it comes to this kind of stuff. I know everyone has mixed feelings, but this is kind of it's not a very pretty picture, but this is a $20,000 solar photovoltaic system installed in Tenino, I think?
No, that's down in
Rochester?
Rochester. Yeah.
Rochester, okay. And this is a gentleman who called us, this is one of my favorites actually, my favorite stories, and called us and said, hey, I had this windmill installed. It was about a $20,000 windmill. It's not doing what it's supposed to. Would you come look at it? And my dad, being the energy nerd he is, says, yeah, no problem, I'm totally interested. Starts talking to the guy, and basically they calculate out for the exact same amount of money, he could install a solar photovoltaic system that would produce 10 times the energy, and I think it was like 15 to 20 times the incentives and energy savings. Because solar has a little bit higher incentive base than wind does, but also wind and solar, the measurement on how much they can actually produce is a little bit different. With solar, we can take one picture and know exactly how much sunlight your system, or how much energy your system will produce. Whereas wind, you really have to do about a year-long study, and most windmill salesmen don't want to wait that long to make the sale. So that's kind of one of the differences.
But the wind would be more viable on the coast.
Yeah.
Where it's windy a lot windier than here.
Or East Coast, or east side of the state.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. It was interesting, he sent me an email last week that said in January, his solar produced 215 kilowatt hours, which is about $100 in incentive payments, and his windmill produced 10 kilowatt hours, which is about $1.50 in incentive payments. So there really is quite a difference. So solar, we like it, and our customers and other people around like it because it really is truly sustainable. A solar panel will produce as much energy as it takes to make the panel in 2 years. So after 2 years, it's a completely positive energy source. It's completely pollution-free on the actual production side. There is some pollution on the manufacturing side, but it's really easy to manage and treat as it should be, so that's one of the reasons I like it. It does have a payback period. You can actually have systems that will pay for themselves, in some cases in as few as 5 years, and it really just depends on how you measure that. But up above, it produces 10 times more energy than wind. They're really low maintenance. All you really have to do is wash them off. We recommend about once a year. The incentives are great. I'll talk a little bit about the changing incentives, which is something that you get from me and not my dad, so congratulations. It is a mature and efficient technology. A lot of people ask us what's going on with like nano cells and thin film, and really when it comes down to it, the same design that they've been using for the last 50 years is the most efficient and the most affordable. You're going to get the most for your money with those, and they are environmentally sustainable. That traditional design, they're 90% recyclable. So when you've got a system that's ready to be phased out, we can very easily recycle it. And it's really easy to get made in the U.S. and made in Washington, so you're supporting a local economy. So, solar in Washington. Not a lot of people think it actually works here. Germany is the world's leading user of solar panels, and even Olympia gets more sunlight than they do. So they get about, I think it was about 700 to 900 kilowatt hours for every kilowatt of solar that they install. Don't need to worry about the math on that, just believe me. And then in Western Washington, we get about 1,000 kilowatt hours for every one that we install. So Olympia, I think PSE's ratio was like 960 kilowatt hours when it really came down to it for their territory.
It's basically 20% more than Germany.
Yeah, around here. Patrick's the physics guy. He's my dad in training. So, yeah. It's just the glasses. He just looks smart. But yeah, so we actually get enough sunlight, and you don't need to have direct, clear sunlight. So if you imagine, a beautiful sunny day is 100% sunlight. A day like today, when there's only 50% cloud cover, let's call it, you're only getting 50% of the light that you normally would. Your system will just produce 50% less. It's really easy to calculate out exactly how much you'll get, and as long as there's daylight, as long as you can see it, they're going to produce. It's just a matter of how much and what obstacles you might have in the way. And this is another one my dad put in there. People that say, I don't want solar panels, I don't think they're very pretty. It's like, well, anyone want that in their backyard instead? That's what our alternative is some days. This is Germany. What they're doing there is they're actually designing their buildings to have maximum southern exposure. So you can see they kind of have a shorter roof on the back northern side and that big long south-facing roof. That's to optimize their solar potential, and they're trying to essentially eliminate their nuclear power source, and they're actually ahead of schedule on that. It's really inspiring, actually. My dad did an internship in Denmark. My mom was almost Danish, actually.
Are other countries really pursuing it?
Yeah.
Particularly
Germany's the leader. Spain's Spain's next, and the thing is a lot of European countries were going more nuclear, thinking that it was a better source. And then as things kind of progress, we've seen Japan and that disaster and things like that. They're trying to move away from it. And solar seems to be the way that a lot of countries are going right now. We've got at least 2 panels that we buy that are either owned or built in Germany. We either do owned by the U.S. company or built in the U.S. depending on what it is, and they're going that way. Did that answer your question?
Oh, that'd be kind of nice, built in the USA.
Yeah,
Like
that's what we try and do. We try and do made in Washington as much as possible, actually. Yeah, keep the jobs local. I mean, part of the reason people go solar, and everyone does it for a different reason, but what I've seen is a lot of people are actually doing it for national security reasons. We've got a we've got one little old guy in Yelm who had it installed, and very, very grumpy old man, to say nicely.
Air Force guy.
Huh?
The Air Force guy.
Yeah.
One name names.
Yeah, but he did it because, first off, his daughter wants to inherit his house, or his granddaughter or daughter wants to inherit his house, and so he wanted to get it where they had absolutely no electricity bills. And he was tired of the fact that our main source of energy is reliant on another part of the world that he's not too friendly with. So this was his way of not just creating his own energy, but helping with our national security.
And he didn't care about the costs. We did half his roof, and he called us a month later and said, cover the next half.
Well, that was because he also took out those trees.
He took trees on, but he was just like, I don't care. He wasn't, the environmental aspect wasn't really a concern of his, or he just wanted to look cool as well, with solar panels over his roof. And just...
It snowed last year, and he called us from Arizona, where he's a snowbird. My panels aren't producing anything. What's wrong? There's snow on them. Sorry. So then there are three basic types of solar photovoltaic systems. There's Gridtied, which is standard, and that's you're connected to the utility still. So if you're not producing as much as you need, you can still buy from the utility at your regular rate. If you're producing more than you need, you get a direct credit from the utility, and that way we can also size systems a little bit smaller because you don't have to be 100% reliant on the utility. The problem with that is, though, and this is why some people try and avoid it, is that you do lose power if the utility goes out, just because it's a safety reason. If you're backfeeding the utility and there's someone trying to repair a line or something like that, it's an electrocution hazard. But it's really easy to just tie in a generator to that, which tends to be more cost effective than the next option, which is battery backup. And that's where you have a standard grid-tied system, but you have batteries that can help store electricity in case the power goes out. The advantage to that is you have a cleaner electricity source than you would with a generator. It's a perfect sine wave because it has to go through the inverter, which is actually smarter than the grid. But batteries are very, very expensive, and they add a lot of upfront cost, especially on the shipping and manufacturing side. And then there's off-grid, which is when your site does not already have utility power, or if you have like a specialty system you want to install, if you've got a well pump maybe that you just want to have it be self-sufficient, or we've seen it where people have bought property and it's $30,000 to run the utility out to the property site. And they figured they'd rather spend $30,000 on solar and never have a utility bill. So it really it depends on what it is you need. We work on all these systems. We're actually one of the few companies that does all three, and I blame my dad for that. Gridtie PV, like I said earlier, in Washington State we have a really unique system. And I'll elaborate on what that is, but first you've got the panels. They produce DC electricity. And then that has to go through the inverter, which converts the DC electricity to AC electricity, which is what we have in our homes. And it has to be a very precise, smart system because it has to match the grid. Your appliances, your lights, your electric car, it can't tell the difference if it's getting its power from the solar or from the utility. And that's because of that little inverter. And the inverter is also what knows if the power is out or not and if it has to shut down. So if there's too high a voltage coming in, if there's a power outage, if there's dirty power coming in, spikes, exactly, that inverter will shut off to protect your solar panels, and vice versa to protect the alignment if the power is out. So it's a really smart little gadget. There's all kinds of ways to do it.
That's happened before with an anomaly in the voltage in the neighborhood. One of our customers had his inverter malfunctioning. No, it was turned off, and Kirk checked it and said, well, the grid was bad, something was wrong with the neighborhood grid, so Kirk contacted PSE, and...
They didn't believe him on the first phone calls.
Yeah, and then Kirk's like, it's saying it's 250 instead of 240 or something, and Kirk saved them thousands, maybe millions of dollars. I don't know how bad, how far the extent was, but it could have burnt out everyone's electronics over a long period of time with the wrong voltage coming in.
They didn't believe him at first. He had to call back, and he was trying to explain to him how the solar worked and how it could tell. And finally he called back, he's like, somebody's TV won't turn on out here. Next thing you know, they came out and fixed it. So then once it goes through the inverter, in Washington State we have a unique program called the Production Incentive. And what that is we install a second meter at your home, and that meter keeps track of everything that your solar array produces, whether you use it or not. And you actually get a check once a year from the utility for all of that production.
Get a check back from them.
You get a check back from them for everything it produces, whether or not you even use it. Yep.
So back to the customer with the winds, he made $100 and something worth last month.
In January.
So
Yeah.
so last month, that guy with the big pole mount array that Deborah showed the photo of, he banked up $110 towards that check, which he'll get, sometime in the summer or fall.
Usually get your
In
check in
January.
August.
Is
Yeah.
that over and above what you would have paid for an electric bill?
Well, that's its own thing. Now what happens after it
That's separate
passes
from
through that meter
Which is nice.
is it either goes into your home, so you don't have to buy electricity, or you're producing more than you need, so it goes back out to the utility and it rewinds your meter backwards. So you're getting a check once a year, plus your monthly utility bill goes down. And so that's kind of cool because it all keeps track of it automatically. You don't have to worry about what's getting solar and what's not, and just every month on your utility bill you'll see it's here's what you used, here's what you produced, either here's how much you owe us or here's how much we're going to roll over to your next month's bill. And that's, it rolls over every year until April, and then in April it starts over. So all your summer production gets banked, and you can use it over the winter.
Summer meeting, go backwards and have a party.
It happens. It happens.
Wow.
So there are a few different types of inverters. Gridtied inverter feeds into your main electrical panel. This is a centralized inverter. There are two main types of inverters. A centralized inverter, you have one inverter to so many panels, and that's nice because it's just all centralized. The problem with it is we can't scale the same way we can with the next type of inverter, which is a microinverter. And I don't remember if I grabbed the display or not, but it's a one inverter to one panel, or one inverter to two panels. And what that allows for is if you have shading with a central inverter, any shading will affect the entire system. It's only as strong as its weakest link. And with a microinverter, if one panel is shaded, it doesn't affect the others. But also, the microinverters come with a monitoring system. So wherever you are at any time, you can see what your system's producing or which panel's producing how much. And Patrick enjoys logging into that every morning to see how everyone's doing.
Yeah. And then find problems with that as well, which we have.
A couple times, yeah. And then there's the microinverter, and so as you can see, the dark ones are shaded. They're only producing 16 to 32 kilowatt hours, or kilowatts at that given time. Watts, thank you, sorry. And then the lighter blue ones are producing more, so you can see, if you've got a tree that's creating issues with your system or anything like that. It does allow for smaller systems this way. With a centralized inverter, we have to do so many panels to an inverter for maximum efficiency. With microinverter systems, we do what my mom calls Lego systems, which are you can start with 3 and then add on 3 in multiples of 3 over time. So if you were, say, building a house, you could just do 3 now and then add on 3 later as your budget allows. So it's kind of fun. We can get both types of inverters made in Washington. And then just again, the production meter. With the production meter, you get a check once a year, and that's 15 to 54 cents a kilowatt hour. You get a higher incentive if it's made in Washington. And then a net meter, you'll just see the difference every month in your utility bill. And this is what they look like. You can tell which one's the original because it's the same color as the house. So yeah, it literally goes through one system, keeps track, once a year, check, and then over here it keeps track of what's going back and forth. So 3 kilowatt system is about $4 to $7 fully installed, depending on if you go made in Washington or not. And so at 54 cents a kilowatt hour, that's about $1,600 a year from the utility. And at a your energy savings would be about $300 a year. So you'd come out on top at about $2,000 a year from incentives and utility savings. And the reason we have those production incentives is because we just have such low utility bills for the national average. Places like California where they're paying 24 cents a kilowatt hour, or Hawaii where it's almost $1 a kilowatt hour, they get their savings through that. Washington State, in order to promote the industry, that's where they came up with the idea of the production incentive, which is kind of modeled after Germany. And interesting fact that I learned, they did a study recently that showed that solar saves taxpayers about 54 cents a kilowatt hour that it produces, because there's reduced pollution, there's reduced noise, there's reduced subsidies, all these things that go into our traditional electricity costs that are hidden, or we don't really connect to electricity very often in our minds, are reduced to right about the same rate, and that's a complete coincidence. Washington didn't know that when they came out with the program. So how to know if your site is right for solar? You want to make sure that you're eligible for the state and utility programs. Some utilities go above and beyond, but I'll just talk about what the standard state is, and that is the 15 to 54 cents a kilowatt hour from the production incentive, and the net metering again. And to be eligible for those, you want to be the person that owns the house, the person that buys the system, and the person whose name's on the utility bill. That's how you get the maximum savings from it. There are a couple, I'll just talk about this real quick. There are a couple bills right now in the legislature that would affect this a little bit. Worst case scenario is that you'd have to have your system installed by June of 2013 to qualify. Best case scenario is that if you have a system installed after June of 2013, you just have 10 years of production incentives from when your utility, or from when you install your solar. Right now it expires in 2020. So one of the bills that I'm frantically trying to get comments in on is that they would extend that to 2013, so everyone would have at least 10 years, and then after that, just have 10 years set for whatever the rate is at that time. The idea would be that the rate would slowly go down every year. And then when we come out to your site, and you can kind of do this too a little bit to a degree, but we have to measure your solar potential. And to get good solar potential, what you want is to have south-facing exposure. Slightly west of south is okay, slightly east of south is okay. West of south is actually almost better than south in our area, because we tend to get that morning fog. But you also want to make sure you don't have trees, you don't want to have too much shading or anything like that. One tree is okay, you know, some shading's okay, but we can measure exactly how much of an impact it has. You want to make sure that your home itself, or the roof that you're going to be putting it on, is in good condition. It doesn't have to go on your roof, it's more cost effective to go on your roof. It doesn't cost as much, but you know, you want to make sure that your wiring's up to date, the structure of your home's up to date, things like that. The low-hanging fruit, that's one of our favorites to actually tell people about, is when you look at solar, dollar for dollar, you get more energy savings by doing energy improvements than you do with solar. We don't do energy improvements. I promise I'm not crazy by telling you this. But we have all kinds of different companies that we recommend. You know, if you've got windows that haven't been upgraded for 30 years, or no insulation in your attic, that's going to make much more of an impact than solar will. And there's actually a workshop this coming Saturday at the Lacey Library that's going to be hosted by the Northwest Energy team. Well, they'll talk about that a little bit more. And we'll be there, and it's free, so if anyone wants to reduce their bill a little bit less cost intensively than solar, that's a great way to do it. And then after we meet with you, and we've kind of gone over all those things with you, we'll recommend a design, a system that we think would work best, and we always provide a cost-benefit analysis as part of what we do. And any good solar installer will give you a cost-benefit analysis when you install solar. This is just an illustration. Again, you know, south is perfect, west, east, okay. Don't do north, whatever you do. If someone tells you to install solar systems on the north side of your house, tell them to go away. And then, because we're in the northern hemisphere, we get a pretty wide variance on winter to summer sun, and that's something that we take into account when we do our site assessment, is we'll design to have the optimum year-round exposure. And in Washington, because we actually have our overhang, we're in a unique position, because I can do this in an essay, I'm not sure I can do it visually. So when the sun is higher in the sky, it's more efficient to have a lower tilt on your panels, right? Does that make sense? And then when it's lower, most places you want it to be a little bit lower, which is why so many places put in tracking systems so it can keep track. But in Washington, because we have the diffused winter light, you know, you look up at the sky, you can't really tell where the sun is at any given point. You just know it's light enough, we can actually have a steeper slope on our panels and get more efficiency all year round because of that diffused cloud light. So that's kind of a cool fact that I just learned recently actually. And then this is the tool that we use when we do a site assessment. Any good installer, solar company will have a tool. If they just look at your roof and say, yeah, you're good, they don't know what they're talking about. With this tool, we can tell you for every hour of the day are what these lines are, and for every month of the year what these lines are, how much solar you're going to get at that site. So, for example, they've got a tree right there, so we know that from about 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. during the winter, and about 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. during the summer, they're not going to have a lot of solar coming off their panels. And so this was one where we actually recommended that they didn't go solar, but they decided to anyway. And yeah, we'll tell people not to waste their money. If it doesn't work, it's not a good thing. It gives us a bad reputation. So yeah, so that's kind of the tool we use, and that's how we know with just one picture exactly how much solar you have at your site and how your system will produce. And that's accurate to 99%.
The Pathfinder?
Yeah.
Sure.
How do you take that picture?
Yeah, usually what my dad does is there's a little stand, and he sets the tool, which I don't have with me today. It looks kind of like an upside down bowl. He sets that on the stand, and then he just takes a picture with a digital camera. And then he uploads it into the software, draws that yellow line, and then based on the yellow line, the latitude, and the longitude, it spits out what your solar potential is.
And it's based out of 100%, so like that one might be of, you know, say you get a 1,000 watt system,
Yeah.
that one might say you're gonna get 70% out of that. So you might get a, 700 watts, as an average because of that big chunk cut out.
And then we can calculate your incentives and everything based on
Cut
that.
that tree and you get it.
Yeah.
The farther you get away from shade, does that make quite a difference too?
The farther the better, yeah.
Farther the better, huh? So build your house right in the middle of it, you got trees on one edge, right?
Yeah.
Or you can do an off or a ground mount or a pole mount system. It doesn't have to go on your roof. It costs less.
We have overgrowth timber on the other side of our house, so.
Which north or south?
West.
Right.
Well,
And our house is actually, the roof's west and east, so.
It's not my timber. I could have sold it a lot of times, but
Yeah.
I didn't know.
you could do we're doing one, we've done a couple, we're doing one this week where we've actually done it as like a patio cover, or you can use it for a carport cover or something like that if you want to build something.
And we'll, in this case, it's already built, but we've built verandas, and then come back, a week later after the concrete set and everything's ready, and then just put solar on top.
And don't tell the IRS, but we found that if you bill for that building as part of the solar installation, you can take your 30% federal tax credit on it too.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. Incentives, what is it? So there's a 30% federal tax credit, which is a one-time tax credit. It's through 2016. If you don't have the liability, you can take up to 5 years to claim it. So that's huge right off the top. Then there's the production incentives. Right now it's a $5,000 a year cap. Like I said, there's a few bills right now that might tinker with that a little bit. So we'll see. So it's 15 cents a kilowatt hour if you've got the general solar installed on your home. Has to be connected to the utility though. It's 18 cents if you've got a Washington State made inverter. It's 36 cents if you've got Washington State made panels, and it's 54 cents if everything's made in Washington. So that's kind of where the difference in incentives comes into place. We really like made in Washington. Silicon Energy out of Marysville is one of our favorite panels. My dad says it's one of the best panels in the world right now.
Quality is pretty good for both
Yeah.
makers in Washington.
Yeah.
It's
So
the best you probably get in the country.
we actually have about 5 different companies that manufacture in Washington State.
How about dangers or any hard spots with this? We've been hearing about all the good things, now there must be a bad one or two.
Panels are heavy.
Yeah, the panels are
Can't
heavy.
think of one, huh?
They cost a lot. They do cost a lot.
When it snows,
It slides off faster than it does your roof.
Yeah. usually don't
Well, that
have
was
to get,
the biggest downside I get, when it snows, it's not producing as fast.
Yeah, but it will
That's a
slide off
downside.
the panels faster than it will your roof because they're glass. Really?
And could you put salt on the glass and it wouldn't affect the glass, like you do a driveway?
it wouldn't, the snow would come off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We've never
Even
had
without
to
it?
go up on a roof and scrape snow off, usually
Yeah.
it comes off.
The
What is-
longest I've seen snow stay on panels, at least in Washington, is maybe 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's really not.
The other, I don't know, what's one other negative, looking for negatives, it doesn't, so if the grid goes down, you don't have power off your panels because it's a built-in safety mechanism, so you don't put power back into the grid when there's linesmen down the road fixing a down line and they get electrocuted because their solar is pumping juice.
You can't put like gen packs on it to block it, like
You
you
can-
do with your generators.
You can put a generator on it, but legally they don't allow you to. And in fact,
Yeah.
actually, when we had the power outage a few years ago, my mom wakes up at 4 a.m. There's somebody here. There's somebody here. And in fact, the utility crewmen had come to do the manual shut off on our solar just to make sure because they didn't even trust it. And
Really?
yeah, they came and they manually shut down my parents' solar. So that was, it's really a safety issue for them, and it kind of scares the utility workers a little bit.
I can see why.
But yeah, really the
Yeah.
the biggest downside is tends to be cost, and that's because it's not like gas or coal where you just buy what you need at any time. You're essentially buying a power manufacturing plant,
Yeah.
and you've got to pay for the whole thing at once. But once it's paid for, it's free electricity. So a minimum installation is usually about $5,000 before the 30% federal tax credit. We tend to be right around the same price as the other local installers. When we're talking about other installers, I divide them into 3 categories. The ones that are in business and solar just happens to be how they make money. Those that like solar and have found a way to do it as an income, kind of like my family has. And those that are so excited about solar but have absolutely no idea what they're doing. And the ones that are in solar for business tend to cost a little bit more. We tend to actually be about 30% under what one of those companies would charge, and typically it's because they offer financing, which us smaller companies don't. We know how to get you financing, but we don't offer it. And then the ones that are super, super excited about solar but have no idea what they're doing think that they can do a system for dirt cheap, and if they...
Without proper licenses.
Yeah, and so that can kind of get dangerous. So you always want to make sure you get a couple quotes, and we'll actually tell you who else to call for a quote depending on where you live, because solar's not like a refrigerator or anything else you buy now. If your refrigerator breaks, you probably blame the manufacturer or the company that installed it or the part that broke. If somebody installs a solar system that doesn't work right, people tend to think it's just solar that doesn't work, because it's still such a new thing. So that's why we're really encouraging of getting other quotes, talking to other people, doing workshops like this.
Shop around.
Exactly. Can't tell you how many people have called me. Well, I just signed up for $30,000 in this type of system, and I'm like, that company's not even licensed, and we're 20% less.
How do these things hold up? I mean, they last for quite a while, or?
They have, and these are the 2 made in Washington panels. The bottom one is Silicon Energy. They're my dad's favorite. The top one is iTech. They're really great too. But Silicon Energy, which my dad says is his favorite, it's kind of the super panel. It's rated to essentially withstand a minor league pitcher throwing a 2-inch ball bearing as hard as he can at a panel. I mean, they'll hold up in terms of damage and things like that. A typical warranty on a panel is so many years workmanship and then so many years power output. So the idea with that is that I've seen it 20 years, I've seen it 25 years, I've seen it 30 years, it'll still produce a certain percentage of what it was originally designed for. So if you've got a 200 watt panel that has a 30-year, 80% power output, what's the math on that, Patrick?
100, you said 200 pounds, so
Yeah.
in 30 years it should still be making up to 160 watts.
Or a minimum of 160
Or a
watts.
minimum.
Yeah. So
Pretty good investment.
yeah, so they'll last, and then on top of that, they'll keep producing. Silicon Energy, they got the national laboratory that does the testing and rating on solar panels. They normally do, I think, a 20-year test on panels.
Yeah.
Silicon Energy got them to do an 80-year test on their panels, and after 80 years, the Silicon Energy panels showed less signs of degradation than a standard panel at 20 years. So they're a really great panel. They'll last. My parents have a 30-year-old system on their house that they actually bought secondhand, and they had to replace one $20 part, and it's still producing. And they paid maybe 50 cents less a watt than the person originally paid for it.
And the original panels that were invented at Bell Labs still work, last I heard.
They're
You
still,
bounce
that was
them off, I don't.
that was in the
Taking
50s.
chunk out of it.
yeah.
1954. They still work.
And in terms of braking, I mean, they're designed to withstand hail, they're designed to withstand earthquakes, they're designed to withstand, they're designed to meet the California building codes, which are the strictest in the nation. The only panel that we've ever had to replace that wasn't covered by warranty, we've had a couple little warranty issues, which were all taken care of, no problem. But the only one that wasn't covered by warranty was during the big ice storm a few years ago, and an entire tree didn't fall this way, fell this way, so the trunk of it landed square on a panel and broke the panel. It was covered by homeowners insurance, and the homeowners insurance not just paid for us to replace that panel, but because that panel was about a 10-year-old panel, we couldn't find panels that matched it, and for efficiency, you want the panels to be similar, especially in terms of voltage and wattage. So they paid for us to do an entire upgrade on the system, because we could not find panels that matched it. And the way that their system worked was they essentially had 3 mini systems, so they replaced that entire system on this one, and then we have the rest sitting in our warehouse in case anything happens to the rest of the system.
If you drive up South Bay Road, everyone's familiar with that. Just before, it's on the corner of South Bay and 26th, on the corner, you see that house with the 3 arrays in the backyard. That's that house. And the homeowner likes to move the panels around with the sun on his own.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah,
Yeah, I was
there's a
gonna
lot of.
say, yeah, cause that would
moving.
be the only way we could do it, it wouldn't work.
Their house is totally covered with trees. So he has it out in the back on the southwest corner of his property with a rope attached to each one. So he can go out and pull the panels as the day progresses, and then ties the rope to, he has some sort of pole or stick behind each one. And in windstorms, he's able to lock it up, and they won't move.
He was one of the local pioneers of solar. He went solar in the 70s, I think, when slight political change. He was not happy, and he was going to be prepared because he didn't want to be feeding the government system anymore. And his panels still work just fine with the exception of that tree. So why go solar now and why not just wait? Solar prices are at a record low right now. It's really interesting. As energy prices go up, solar prices tend to go down. So a lot of people will say, well, why not wait until the new technology comes out and it's cheaper? Well, what we're finding is that the difference in incentives and the difference in energy costs is canceling out making the investment now. And it's always a personal decision. But, do you know what REN is? Is that an acronym or something?
Where is that?
I think it's supposed to be green.
That's
I
the-
think it's supposed to be green.
Wait, where is this?
Third one down.
Third one.
Solar is
Solar is
green.
green.
Okay.
Green.
I didn't do that.
Anyway, so what'll happen is as prices go down and as incentives go down, it tends to be fairly proportional. And we have a customer who keeps very accurate track of his system. And for the solar tour last year, gave me all his data. And I entered it into a spreadsheet and I was recording it. And I heard my dad on the phone, well, yeah, but prices are going down, but at the same time this is happening, and I did the calculation really quick. And just in his production incentives, he came out on top as if he was to buy a system today. The lowering and cost of the system versus getting an extra 6 months of production incentives, he still was ahead financially. So it's kind of nice to see that we're not lying when we say things like that.
And he was making more than we had projected too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, we tend to have conservative numbers. Our average installation actually produces 102% of what we say it will, because we want to undersell if anything. So if anyone tells you that your system will produce more than 1,000 kilowatt hours for every kilowatt that they're installing, don't believe them. At least if you live in this area. And then solar is green. It really is. It's one of the most environmentally friendly energy sources there is when it comes down to it. There's no noise pollution. There's no shadow flicker like you get with windmills. The only pollution is on the manufacturing and transportation side, as opposed to coal, which is, if you pay attention, they're trying to do a train because that's how often it needs to go through. The incentives are time limited. While they guarantee, whatever you sign up with will be there for as long as we promised it to you. Like right now, there are 3 bills in the legislature that are looking to play with that. Some are good, some are bad, some extend it, some don't. We'll see. We'll keep you updated if you get our newsletter. But the big one right now is the sales tax exemption. Solar photovoltaic systems, you don't have to pay sales tax on. We don't have to collect it, you don't have to pay it, nothing. Through this June. So anything after June, we can't promise it's sales tax exempt. There's one bill, but I'm not very hopeful just because of the way our state's finances are right now. There's lots of financing available. You can do a home equity loan, or we can hook you up with a bank or credit union. Olympia Credit Union right now has a great program where they do a home equity loan for solar or whatever your energy efficiency upgrade is, but they base your home equity on after the upgrades have been made. So if you're kind of getting close on the equity line, that can help. And then Generations Credit Union, which is a smaller local credit union over on East Side Street, they have a program where the solar panels themselves are the collateral on the loan. So if you're interested in that, it's a little bit higher interest rate, but it's pretty much dollar for dollar. You don't have to worry about home equity. And then there's the solar tour, which is every year in September or October, and we will occasionally do one at a couple sites just because we like to. But that's where you can go around and actually talk to people who have solar installed, and talk about their experience, and that's always fun. We also have a list of people that have either we've done work on or someone else has that we're allowed to give their contact information out. So if you want to talk to somebody, let us know. And so this is a sample budget that we do when we do a site assessment, and usually there's 2 or 3 on a page, depending on what you're interested in. This would be a made in Washington system. It's a 3,900 watt system, or 3.9 kilowatts. Materials cost is about $20,000, and really we don't make a lot of money on the materials. That's pretty much what we're writing to all of our suppliers. We're not getting rich fast, I promise. The installation administration, that's guys like Patrick going out to the job site or working on computers and stuff like that, for a total of let's say $27,000. Right off the top, you've got an $8,000 tax credit. Asset value, we'll put it on there, but we won't always take it into account based on what you like. What that's saying is if you sell your home, you can get at least that much for your system. Or if you decide to uninstall your system and sell it, you can get at least that much for the system. California, they're finding that where systems are being installed for $7 to $10 a kilowatt hour, if you were to sell your home with that, you'd get up the equivalent of, I think it was like $4 to $7 per kilowatt hour in addition to your home. So that's pretty neat that
It's like 50%?
more depending on the system, yeah, in the neighborhood. But I mean, we've seen maybe 2, maybe 3 used systems that have been resold, and they sell fast and they sell for pretty close to what was originally paid for them. It's pretty amazing how much they really hold their asset value. And then so the cost of system after 5 years is about $200, and that's based on the fact that that system would produce 3,900 kilowatt hours a year, which is about 100% efficiency at a site. The production incentive would then come out to $2,100 a year. The electric bill savings would be right around $200 a year for an annual return of $2,300. The total 5-year return of $10,600, and 5 years to pay back with an annual rate of return of 12.5%. So try and find a CD that'll do that for you these days. And then there's all kinds of resources if you want more information. We have them on our website, we have them on our newsletters, but there's all kinds of organizations you can talk to. We really like, if you're thinking about it, bless you, a lot of people will look at us and say, well, you're just trying to sell it. Of course you're going to say that there's all these great programs, but Desire USA is the site, bless you again, that has actually the database for all the national, state, and local incentives. So if you're not in the PSE area, you can look up and see what your utility offers. the 15 to 54 cents per kilowatt's pretty standard for most utilities. Some don't offer anything, others offer more. Grace Harbor offers more. They're pretty cool and flexible with it. And then there's all kinds of other places to get more information and more data. And I think I talked too fast. Woodrow Wilson, this is my dad's trying to get everyone with the emotional catch. Anybody care about the emotional side of solar? Okay. Yeah, I think that was actually the shorter version, because it usually takes, I don't know, right about an hour. Never mind, I did okay. We've got more slides if anyone wants to hear about solar hot water or anything like that, or if there are any questions. Patrick and I are happy to hang around for a few hours.
I'm interested in the solar hot water.
Okay, I can do that. It's actually my husband's specialty. Oh, this is funny. I like this comic. Everybody read it? It's Mr. Oil Company, can you save our energy crisis? Sure, want coal? We own the mines. You want oil and gas? We own the wells. You want nuclear energy? We own the uranium. You want solar or wind? We, solar and wind aren't feasible. So that's kind of another perspective on it. I actually saw a great article, Fox News, talking about Germany. Germany, the reason solar is so popular in Germany is because they have so much more sun than the US.
They said that?
Yeah, Fox News said that. Did
Fox News?
Fox? Yeah.
Yeah, but.
So you guys remember
They would never say that.
Oh, come on.
that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at how much more sun Germany has than the rest of the US.
Yeah, and on Facebook it's been requoted as more than Washington State, or less than.
Yeah.
Germany's
We-
got more Germans than
Yeah.
Washington.
More bratwurst. This is a cool car. That's my dad. And that guy in the hat's actually my brother, who's about another foot taller than me now. But that is a car that was built. You can see it X of One or powerof1.com. And Marcus, the guy in the yellow jacket, he built that himself. He hand soldered the entire car, and he's driving it around the world. And the only place he couldn't get it licensed to drive was his hometown in Canada. Everywhere else he was allowed to drive it. And he's driven it Arctic Circle, West Coast. He drove it through Olympia. I think the only place he's gotten stuck so far was a spot in Oregon, where they just had a bad rainstorm come through, and he couldn't get enough power to drive it for the day. But Australia, Europe, he's taken everywhere. And my dad's favorite thing to say is, you know, this guy, you know, he walked up to me, he's like, well, you know, what's your background? Physics, science, you know, are you like me, or, you know, kind of, what'd you do? He's like, I'm a flight attendant. I got bored one Saturday and decided to do this, so it's kind of cool to see what other people have done. This is our electric car. That's my sister and our dog, and that's our office. It's we say it's solar powered because it just plugs in, and we're having a workshop on the 23rd that we're going to talk specifically about solar and electric cars and how they work together. But it's pretty cool. It's a Ford Taurus that my dad, my brother, and my husband, back before we were married, that was his get them to like me project. They built that from an old.
Dowry,
Yeah.
Basically, we
Ford
did that when
Taurus.
we didn't have jobs, and
Yeah.
like 1 or 2 days a
So,
week.
while you have that shot up, what's the slope on that roof?
That roof is actually, those aren't flush mounted, they're what we call rack mounted. So the roof is actually what, Patrick?
It actually goes down slightly.
Yeah, it actually faces north, but what would you say the slope on it is?
The slope of the roof,
Yeah.
I'd say like negative 10 degrees.
Okay, so we got a negative 10 degree, and then we rack the panels up so that they go this way. The ideal tilt for a panel is 30 degrees, or a,
Oh, that's lower than I thought it would be.
yeah,
I
what,
thought it'd be 45 or more.
it depends on where you are. In our climate, we found 30 degrees to be the most efficient because the diffused winter sunlight, it doesn't have to be as steep. But really, it's most cost effective to just flush mount it to your roof, whatever that angle is.
Yeah.
And unless it's a really, really shallow pitched roof,
We've got 4.5, 12,
yeah, that's fine.
so that's about 30 degrees
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, and it's actually a little bit more cost effective for us to install on steeper roofs, because otherwise the guys come back complaining about their ankles and how hard it was to stand on that ankle all day. But yeah, it really just depends.
May I have your attention, please? If Eugene Hoover is in the library, could you please come to the returns counter? Eugene Hoover to the returns counter. Thank you.
You don't have a pseudonym, do you, Patrick?
No, I thought I saw one of our customers take that in and run off.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so this is a solar hot water system that was installed on a friend of our family's. My dad was visiting, he got in trouble that day, it's February 14th. So, yeah, but anyway, as you can see, it's kind of just
Why did he get in trouble?
because it's Valentine's Day and he's over at Ken and Leanne's house.
Oh, okay.
But, he was over there and it's a, daylight kinda like today, and they were still getting 90-degree water from their solar hot water. So it definitely works here, and so.
Is that the vacuum tube solar hot water, or?
We do
May I have your
flat,
attention, please? If Michelle Escala is in the library, could you please come to the returns counter? Michelle Escala to returns. Thank you.
trouble today. We like flat panels, and I've got some literature on why, but
Next
basically
page.
what it comes down to is they're more efficient in our climate, so.
Go back.
Okay, so, when you look at an evacuated tube for approximately the same size panel, 32 square feet, I am on the wrong slide, show, you updated this recently.
Yeah, so those numbers there are in thousands of BTUs a day,
Yeah,
so you can see that the vacuum tubes are, underperform compared to the flat plate.
so 26 verse 34, 19 verse 24, and 12 verse 13.
They do better in the winter time, in less sun, but throughout, average throughout the year, the flat plate collectors do a lot better. And they're a lot stronger, sturdier. The evacuated tubes are they're fragile, they're frail, they can break, they need to be replaced.
They also tend to be made in China, and we like to preference made in the US, and flat panels we can get made in California.
And they're really simple, if you see it, it's just black material with copper pipe, it's really simple design.
And then some of them even flash into your roof like a skylight.
Yeah,
So
and
you
we've
can't
done a few of those, usually we do those on new construction, so we can get on there before they put the roofing on.
Does it make any difference roofing or wood, it doesn't make any,
Doesn't affect the system, it shouldn't.
No.
doesn't affect anything whatsoever?
It'll change how we mount it, but unless
Oh,
you.
yeah, I understand, yeah.
That's about it. But the way they work is kind of similar to solar PV, only with liquid instead of electricity. But we run a propylene glycol, which is a non-toxic coolant. You'll actually find it on the ingredients list of a lot of foods, scarily enough.
Mostly in Safeway.
Yeah. But
Go to the bakery and look at the
yeah,
They're
San
baked
Francisco.
and deodorants.
Yeah, but so the way it works is the fluid goes into the system, goes up to the panels, it's heated up, runs down to a heat exchanger and exchanges the heat to your standard hot water. Solar hot water systems tend to be more efficient in our climate. Actually, you get a higher efficiency, but there aren't the same incentives. You still have to pay sales tax. There is a 30% federal tax credit. And there's really no production-based incentives available anywhere because it's kind of hard to measure hot water, whereas your electricity just goes through a meter.
You might notice your power bill you will notice
Yeah,
your power
bill
will be cheaper.
will go down definitely,
Yeah.
but
Most customers will turn off their water heater for the summer.
yeah.
They just flip the switch in their breaker panel and never turn it on because they want more than enough hot water.
What if you're using one of those instant on hot water?
You can marry them.
You can, Mary?
Yeah.
So it just doesn't have, the instant just doesn't have to turn on as much, or it just uses a teeny bit of power to get a few more degrees.
Or it has to run cold water during the summer to keep you from burning yourself.
So you're basically preheating your water before it hits your hot water heater.
Exactly.
And if it gets too hot, we put in a mixing valve that mixes in cool water as it comes out of the tank, so you don't,
Yeah.
because you can get what, I think it was like up to 300 degrees
Uh,
on the panels.
My parents' thermometer, they've got a little thermometer on the kitchen window so my mom can keep track of, it's time to do laundry, it's hot water. But theirs just goes to high at 199 degrees. And during the summer, it usually just says high. So, I
Which
can't
is
tell you.
beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, what's your standard hot water tank, 120 degrees? So, during the summer, you're actually producing more than you need. And there are a lot of countries, Israel, Argentina, just off the top of my head, Australia, they're actually requiring that all new houses have solar hot water installed. They're making it just a requirement. So,
Are there any required codes like that in the United States yet?
they're looking at doing just some more energy efficiency code upgrades, but there really aren't any that came to solar yet.
Might be municipal level.
Yeah, there's some on the municipal level. I know that some cities are trying to push at least solar-ready homes so that people can then just put solar panels on them when they're ready. But we tend to be kind of boring when it comes to stuff like this, unfortunately. Yeah, those are kind of the options. East Side Big Tom's, solar hot water, we did that.
Oh,
Yeah, love walking up in a company shirt and Mike the owner's there and he gives you whatever you want. It's great. Solar hot water, so there are kind of advantages and disadvantages when you compare it to solar PV. A big one is, a big advantage is solar PV, you can size it based on, you know, your budget. You can really go exponentially large, or as large as you want, or as much roof space as you want, or as much as your budget. You know, it's a lot more flexible. Whereas solar hot water, we design it to your usage. So there's kind of like a maximum, and really, unless you have a pool or a hot tub, we really aren't going to do more than about $12,000 in solar hot water. Whereas solar PV, we could do a $100,000 system easily. And the solar hot water, it's designed to how many people are in the home usually, and you know, you kind of let us know what your usage is. And it's not sales tax exempt, but there is a 30% federal tax credit. There's all kinds of ways to do it. You can do a single tank to where it's all the transfer happens in one tank, or you can have two tanks to where the solar hot water goes into one tank and then it feeds into your standard tank. Or you can do, we've done it too where they know that they'll need a new tank soon, so they might as well just do one. New construction, they usually do one. I've seen people that like having two because then if one dies, they don't have to replace the other one necessarily. Two-person system starts at about $8,000 before the 30% federal tax credit. It's a little bit more than you'll see. We tend to be a little bit more expensive on the solar hot water side of things, but like I said, we're using the made in Washington systems that have 30-year warranties, or made in US systems that have 30-year warranties, and will last forever, and we make sure that we work with the manufacturers that have been around for years and years and know what they're doing. So you get solar hot water, is something that we use year round. I'm sure everyone still takes showers in January. Installed, there's a federal tax credit. Oh wow, this is old because it was when it was still TBD on sales tax. It's not as big of a footprint, it's really high efficiency. We'll design systems, they'll do between 65 to 80% of your annual hot water usage. And that's, let's see, the average home in the US is 30% goes to water heating, the average utility bill. So, Patrick,
10%,
quick.
so less than 10, that goes down to like 10% or less.
So it goes from 30% of your utility bill to 10%.
So you're 20% of your utility bill will go down, at least.
I like it. It integrates with conventional plumbing.
And it's really low fi. I mean, the
Yeah.
technology is easy. Like Kirk makes these like for like projects.
For
He's like,
workshops.
let's make a solar hot water panel. And, you know, he took an old refrigerator, took the door off, put a black water. This was like a screen water thing. He painted the whole inside black, put a tank in there, and then put a glass plate over it, and then just fed water through it, and then just the sunlight just heats the tank to 150 degrees, 200 degrees, and he plumbed that into our office for a while, and we were getting hot water from a used fridge with a tank in it painted black.
That was back when he was still messing with being a teacher. You made me think of something, but I don't remember. So this is kind of what we do when you come out to your home for a site survey. For example, we'll check out your roof. You know, how much debris ends up on your roof will kind of give us a sense. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Solar hot water maintenance, same as PV, you just have to wash it about once a year. We can do that, you can do that, we don't charge very much to do it. On the hot water side, the fluid that's in it, you need to check it about every 5 years just to make sure it hasn't degraded, because that's how you keep the panels up. Anyway, when we come to your home, we're going to look at things like where your meter is, where your utility boxes are, where your breaker box is, where your solar hot water tank is, or your hot water tank if you're looking at solar hot water. We'll look at debris on your roof to kind of get a sense of things like that, check the quality of your roof, check if you might need a new roof before you go solar. If you are thinking about solar, you want to have your roof replaced if you're going to need a new roof within the next 10 years. We can do what we call a remove and reinstall, which is where we'll come in, remove the system, they put the new roof on, we put the new system back on. That can cost a little bit, but the cool thing is that we've seen quite a few systems now where they had a brand new roof put on, we installed solar. Then a few years later, 10, 20, 30 years later, they needed a new roof. And the roofers only had to re-roof around the solar because the solar actually protects your roof from the elements and expands the lifetime. So that was pretty cool. This is a hybrid system. It's the single tank, looks like an octopus. Wind, I can't really address that as well as my dad can. My dad calls wind art, if that gives anyone a clue as to how it actually works around here. A lot of times it's kind of just like a breakdown, a $20,000 wind versus a $20,000 solar system. You're gonna get about $35 a year back from wind and about $2,000 a year back from solar. It's quite the difference. Windmills, a lot of times people think it's spinning, I'm getting power, but there's an inertia factor where it has to be past a certain speed, and it has to be like 50 feet above anything to actually work efficiently and stuff like that. Passive solar design, how to use your windows and stuff.
So we do consulting,
Yeah.
That aspect, if it's a new house being built, come in and Kirk will help with some engineering or drawing schematics for maximizing on passive solar, so.
Yeah. And then these are what the batteries look like with the battery backup system.
No, not quite, those are over the top super massive commercial batteries that weigh like 3,000 pounds.
Yeah, but
We had to get a forklift to get those.
But typically with battery backup, we really only recommend it in a couple of situations. I mean, you can always spend your money. I mean, we're happy to take your money, but the thing with battery backup is the batteries add such a large expense that unless you have a reason that you kind of need them. So, for example, we just did an installation where a lady has computer servers for her business at her home. And if the power goes out, a generator won't actually be able to sustainably power those, so she needed it for that. Then we've had customers where, they lose power 2 weeks every year. That makes sense. And then this guy actually, this is his vacation home out on Steamboat Island. And in I was in high school, so the 2008 snowstorm, I think, the power went out. He went out to the house 2 weeks later and everything was flooded, $10,000 in repairs, the pipes had frozen and burst. Oh, it was that much?
It was the $100,000.
Oh, ow. Yeah, anyway, so lots of damage from the home freezing. So he had us install battery backup because that way everything's automatic. He doesn't have to come back down and turn on like a generator or something. It just automatically turns on and off.
And he had in-floor heating for the garage.
Yeah.
And that radiates, it keeps pipes warm and things like that, because that's their vacation home.
Yeah, and so they won't know if something goes wrong there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why they did it. So we kind of, if somebody calls us and says, well, I'm thinking about battery backup system, we kind of interrogate you just to make sure that it's really the best option.
What's cool about the battery backup is it's automatic. The grid goes down, it literally switches to batteries, and you wouldn't even know. And then someone calls you and says, oh yeah, the power's on. You're like, oh, it is? You don't even know because it's...
Yeah,
like
your lights don't even flicker.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're talking about a generator, you're talking about a gasoline power generator.
Mhm.
Are there any solar generators, or are those not practical?
The closest thing is a battery backup system.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on exactly what you're using it for. The issue with battery backup is they're so expensive, and then the issue with generators is they don't create essentially clean electricity.
Yeah, I don't want a gasoline power generator, but I'm a little bit paranoid,
Yeah.
so that's why
Yeah.
I want a backup. So like, when you're saying those are very expensive, what are you talking about?
I'm talking about, think anywhere from an extra 10 to 30% cost on a system. It's I mean, a system that we'd normally sell for, or normally be able to install for like $15,000, suddenly becomes a $25,000 system. Now, you still get the 30% federal tax credit, but by the time we do shipping and everything on the batteries, it really adds up quickly.
So the only other viable option would be a gasoline generator.
Mm-hmm.
Propane.
Propane, yarn, natural gas.
So we're way out on Johnson Point,
Mhm.
so a generator system that would be automatic for us is about an $8,000 system. So this compares to that, then.
Yeah, if you're looking at an automatic generator, it can, we can help
And
you
you
with
can't
that.
use an automatic generator on the solar system,
Mhm.
because it won't switch out.
We've engineered, Kirk's engineered one and that was pretty complicated. I think he learned a lot from that, well, we can still do it, but it's you have to be careful not to, it has to be done very, very, it has to be engineered very carefully,
Yeah.
but it's possible.
And so you could have less battery backup power and reduce your cost, and then you'd still be able to use your solar. And
Yeah.
like if I had 4 hours of battery backup as opposed to 24 hours.
Well, and it depends too on, you know, how long you wanna plan for. You know, do you wanna plan that you're only running your refrigerator for a day, or do you wanna plan that you're running your entire house for a week? And, you know, usually when we have power outages is when we have the least amount of sun, so it takes a little bit more.
I wanna not carry water up from the creek.
I lived
understand.
I lived in Tenino off the
It's like
grid,
an hour.
and I just had a generator, batteries, and solar. So in the summertime, so I lived off batteries, that was it for water and everything, and then in the wintertime, ran a generator to charge the batteries for an hour or two a week. That was it, so I mean, it's definitely doable, and the batteries I had weren't, you know, the components we use are the best you can get in the world. And sometimes they have to get shipped from New York or Arizona, and that costs, you know, for those heavy components. Those ones, I don't know where they came from, but,
They were California.
really California, so, you know, that's why the cost can go up, but we can look at, you know, what will fit your budget if this is what you want. It's like, I want solar, you know, I live Johnson Point, the power goes out from trees down the line, but I wanna be able to have water and keep my freezer going and the light and the internet for a week. We could size that and figure out what can be done. I mean, it's definitely doable, and, you know, even one system we found we did in Yelm was we used secondhand batteries and inverter. Someone was getting rid of it. A solar installer, electrician in Tenino said, I'm getting rid of this, you guys want it? So he's got a really good deal and sold it to a customer. So there's always a way.
We just like to give the warning on battery backup, because I know so many people have called us, you know, oh, for $5,000 I can power my whole house all winter. It's like, no, sorry, actually can't.
Now, you brought up a point about running a refrigerator, you know, just like having a battery backup for us, just to maybe run the refrigerator so all your food doesn't spoil.
Yeah.
I imagine you're talking about a lot less for something like that. I mean, how much would something like that run? Like if you ran a refrigerator for 2
I
days?
can't do that math.
Well, it wouldn't, I mean, it's not like the fridge is gonna be running all the time.
Yeah, the fridge
And
is.
when we put in a battery backup system, we'll put in a second panel, like a breaker panel, and that will have selected loads, like a fridge, a light socket, and your well pump.
Gotcha.
And then when that goes on, you can use those, and, you know, those 3 things will all be all you have when power is out. So that might be you'll know the power goes out in that case, because all your lights go off, but your fridge keeps running. So that's, you know, that's not a problem. So I mean, and I don't think that would be as expensive as 30% of the cost, but maybe an extra,
Yeah.
you know, a grand, starting at, you know, $1 or $2 grand for batteries, and a different type of inverter as well, outback inverter,
Yeah,
which is made in Washington, right?
Yeah, you need a different inverter, it requires a little bit more electrical. It doesn't change the permitting usually, it depends on the jurisdiction.
But you still have solar when the power goes out.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And there is an inverter right now that they're actually trying to get certified where, if the power goes out, you could essentially just plug it directly into the inverter. It wouldn't be able to feed your entire house, but say you needed to like charge a computer or your refrigerator, you could run an extension cord.
So it's like a little generator.
Yeah, just right
Turn the
there.
generator on, plug in an extension cord into it, it's the same thing.
But they're really hesitant about it because of the safety issues. You know, if they accidentally electrocuted somebody because of it, it'd be a.
So that is out on the market or not?
They're testing it still. It's a potential. Fingers crossed it works, but
Yeah.
we'll see. So this is a system out on where they living?
Which one? That's up Johnson Point-ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's out at,
Lost remember, I was confused.
yeah.
So
Was
this was installed a while ago.
That was the first one your dad did with,
Yeah.
oh,
Bravo, yeah, so this just kind of gives you an idea on the sizing. This would be about, well, when it was installed, it would have been about a 1.5 kilowatt system, but today, just because efficiencies have changed a little bit, it'd probably be about a 2 kilowatt system about. And then that's solar hot water, so this is about I think it's a 5-person home.
Yeah.
And that just kind of gives you a sense of what a system looks like and the size it is.
How much power for 5 people that provided all the electricity they needed, or?
Probably not all the electricity. A lot of people will ask us about a 2,000 square foot house, how much solar do I need? Well, we've seen systems where it's a 600 square foot house and 6 panels to the entire house, and then I've seen systems where it's a 1,000 square foot house and 50 panels did half of it. So it's really dependent on, how much you use and things like that, so every system's custom.
That probably does about a third, offsets a third of the power bill.
And like my house, I don't have electricity that powers heat or air conditioning, so when you're tossing out figures, I'm assuming because I'm not heating or cooling my house with electricity that those don't really apply to me as much, because I'm just using my washer, my dryer, my hot water heater,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I could really save money off my electricity with that hot water heater.
Oh yeah, and then one of the things that we do when we do a site assessment is we'll ask for a copy of your utility bill, and we'll kind of use that to judge, what your usage is. And we'll let you know, like, hey, this will do a third, half, 90%, whatever it may be.
Oh, that
of
was,
your usage.
also I was gonna ask you, when you say, well, it's better to weatherize your home,
Mhm.
someone like me who's not using electricity to power or cool their home, that's probably not applicable to?
It could
Because
still
it
be.
doesn't really affect my electrical costs.
Are you natural gas then?
Wood, heat, oil, and heat, which I don't use,
Yeah.
and I'm working on putting a biodigester in our house.
Yeah, in that case, it probably would be more efficient to just skip straight to the solar. But, energy efficiency is always a good investment, because if nothing else, you just don't have to put as many logs in the fire.
Yeah, I have a
Overnight.
1950s Windows.
Yeah.
I can feel the energy go in and out.
Is it fun when you touch them and they're cold?
Just stand next to it and you can feel it suck the cold in.
This is more incentives. Owning versus leasing. There's a few companies that have done leases in the area. The reason we don't recommend them and don't offer them is because essentially what happens is the idea is that you're paying them a monthly lease fee for not owning the system, and that offsets your energy bill. Well, our energy bills are already so low compared to the rest of the country that there really isn't a savings there. And the big companies, Solar City, and what's the other one, do you remember off the top of your
I
head?
just know Solar City.
Anyway, there's 2 or 3 right now that are actually under federal investigation. So it's a system that's very easy for large companies to take advantage
Well,
of.
they come in, they'll put solar on your roof.
You don't own it.
You don't own it, they get the incentives, but your meter, the only thing you can do get is the net metering. So your meter will, because it's plugged into your,
Yeah.
to the grid through your house. So you will have power bill savings, but then you're paying a monthly bill to Solar City for letting them put solar on your roof. And
And-
the only satisfaction you're getting is a lower power bill, and that you're contributing to distributed generation of being, having solar on the roof. But they get, like the little train car cash, they're getting the state incentive, so that, up to $5,000 a year cash that you could be getting, that company will get.
Well, and they also get the 30% federal tax credit, which is why
And
they're
the
being
tax credit.
investigated right now, because what they're finding is a lot of these companies will say, a system that we'd sell you for $30,000, they're saying costs them $50,000 so that they can get that much more of a federal tax credit.
Oh, so they're lying about the cost.
They're over exaggerating the cost, and they're under investigation for, I think one of them's as high as like $2 billion in incentives or something. So, anyway, that's my dad. He's not actually blue. That was his Blue Man costume when he worked at Intel, because it was the mascot at the time. This is a conference that he organized. I believe it was held in India. It's like 200 people were there.
That's not India, that's Portland.
Oh, is it? No, there was some conference he did in India.
That's the
Close
convention
enough.
center.
It's warm, it's
Kirk's
pretty.
the tall bald one in the back, and you
Yeah.
can see his head shining.
And
There's like 10 different slideshows we give, so I know that was one of them.
well, I thought it was the most recent one because it has the most recent intro. I
Yeah.
thought, but anyway, I can go back and do another presentation if
It
you
was
guys
the
want.
one I looked at. Go down.
Scroll down.
Mother presentations too, that's the one.
Mother
That
presentation.
was the one I did
isn't it?
together. Anyway.
I thought that was the one I'm here. Let's see.
Anyway.
I'll make sure I
It's
didn't
the
skip
same.
anything important.
What's the fire protection?
Fire protection, let me see. we're concerned because with all the installations going on out there. So let's see, I'll see if I can cover any of it. A lot of same stuff, a lot of same stuff, a lot of same stuff. Oh, this is just pictures of how we can do installations here. I'll make it bigger. Sorry, usually this is a lot more formal and professional, I promise. So this is mounted to a standing seam level roof. That would be a rack system where it's a flat roof and we rack the panels up. That's just a standard composite roof. Then we can do a pole mount, a ground mount.
That's the one you were talking about where the tree fell on.
Yeah.
Those are the new panels right there that we replaced.
Yeah, and then we can do other things. We can use solar panels as pergolas or carport covers or.
But really quickly, see the array on the top right photo. See, there's the array behind it on the back left of it. There's like there's like 10 panels on that one. Can you point at that one behind it in the background? That one has 10 panels. This one has what, 6?
Yeah, and it's the same kilowatt.
And it's bigger. It's a lot bigger. Even just those 6 panels, even though they're bigger panels themselves, it makes the technology. It's like 10 years older.
How many watts are the typical panels now?
200 plus, 200 to 240.
There's a couple that are 250 out.
A 250.
Are they still gaining wattages every year, so
Yeah.
the next year's model will be 260?
Not next year quite, but
Well,
every few years.
Yeah, it's like a Silicon Energy. When we first started installing in 2008, they had 190 watt panels, and then in about.
That was 195. Now it's 200.
Yeah, and so it was 195, and I remember it being a big issue because we were quoting 190s, and all of a sudden they were sending us 195s, and we didn't quite know how to handle that with our customers at the time. And now they just switched to 200. So
where's that going to peak at? Like computers? I mean, is it ever going to?
my dad's research, he says that really the highest we're gonna probably see is about a 40% efficiency, like absolute miracle highest.
And we're at 20.
And we're at 20% efficient right now. So the ways that efficiency increases are just, slight changes in the quality of the silicon and the way that they process it, and the soldering and exactly what metals they use and the glass that they use. And so it's not like computers where every year it doubles. It's
also the price of materials, like solar panels out of space are probably,
Yeah.
I don't know what they are, they're probably closer to 40%, but they're made out of rare materials, rarest materials. And they cost thousands of dollars each, I'm sure.
Yeah, so my dad could talk about that for hours. It's a system, blah blah blah. Back up, Gridtied, Microinverters, this is all the stuff we saw. Yeah, so starting in the late 1990s, fire officials in regions of California started suggesting things that essentially would make it safer for firefighters to work around solar panels, because if there's sunlight on them, they're producing electricity. So, for example, some of our utilities require disconnects in certain spots so that the firefighters can turn off the main electrical panel and not worry that there's still solar coming in.
I don't know if it's coming up. I know another one is with a solar system on a roof. There has to be 3 feet of roof space to one side.
At a ridge at top.
And 3 feet either on top or bottom for, to get around the system.
And the cool thing is the Silicon Energy panels that are made in Washington, they have a Class A fire rating, which means they won't burn. Like, they won't burn. And so if we start seeing one of the things they're talking about with the increase in forest fires that we've seen recently is talking about increasing the fire code on building materials. They've got to be at least a B or at least something. And I think most solar panels are a Class C fire rating. So and that's what standard building materials are required to be. So if that increases at all, that means a lot of manufacturers will have to catch up. But Silicon Energy in Washington is already ahead of the game. Yay! Typically, if solar causes the fires because of improper insulation, shading can create hot spots, wiring can create issues, physical damage, and occasionally there's a product failure. We've only had a few that have ever had to have warranty issues like that.
There's 3
Rules. Yeah, City of Olympia doesn't actually have that many solar regulations yet. We install as if they do though. A lot of places will. So this would be compliant with like California. See how there's the walkway at the bottom and the walkway at the side, so that they can access it. And these are the silicon energy panels. I like them because they're pretty, they overlap like that. And those, if you use them for like a carport or something, they're almost waterproof. There can be some drippage, but it's pretty neat. But yeah, those are the ones that won't burn.
Can you pop a single panel out, or fairly easily?
Oh yeah. Just
Yeah, they,
Because, well, I'm a firefighter, so
Yeah.
ventilation techniques, we have to be able to get through the roof on the most
well,
viable spot, which is normally
yeah.
up high and above the seat of the
Yeah.
fire.
Well, in that
Well,
case, I
then-
mean, unless you have the tools, or if you just have to break it, I
yeah.
mean, you probably have to break it.
Yeah.
You guys should-
Uh,
you should try.
Yeah, that's a good question, I don't know what.
Maybe you guys should do a seminar for the fire department.
which fire department?
Tumwater.
Okay.
Actually,
All
I'll
the fire
get your
departments.
information, it'd be really easy for you to come out, we'd appreciate that.
You might sell some panels.
Yeah, it depends on the panel. Some of them, you know, a couple blows with a sledgehammer and you could probably wiggle them out, but again, they're glass, so that can be dangerous. Typically, it's just a couple bolts holding them in, so if you can, you know, just unscrew those bolts, you can do that. Walk on them, and then also there is slight breathing room between the panels and stuff, but it's usually not enough for a full vent. I know my father-in-law's a firefighter, and he was telling me about all the ideas he'd have for, you know, if there was a fire on a solar panel house, and I'm like, okay, you and my dad have fun figuring that out. But yeah, there's a few different techniques, and every state either has its own or doesn't have regulations so far.
Jaws of life open then.
Yeah, probably
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, are you
That
gonna
might
bring
be
those
the-
on the roof though?
No,
That might
no,
actually.
we're gonna bring, some poles and a chainsaw, and then have a roof ladder that we work off of, so the
Yeah.
roof
Like-
ladder would then.
Those panels are the ones that are rated for 140 pounds per square foot. I mean, we get on those things all the time and we're jumping on them and just for fun.
Yeah.
And they won't break, so I mean, you're really gonna have to
Yeah.
wail into them to break them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's tempered glass, like, it's like that thick, and then the wafers are set in the middle. So-
Call Silicon Energy, ask them what they recommend.
So in a situation like that though, wouldn't you just go on the north side of the roof on the opposite side, or is
Well,
that?
the situation, depends on the situation, and what we wanna do is we wanna get it as high as possible above the seat of the fire. So if you're venting in another location, you're gonna be drawing the fire to that location, and so, granted, you know, I see ventilation done on structure fires a dozen times a year, you know, that I work at the most, and,
But there's still that
so
chance that it's
there's
at
still that
one,
chance, and
yeah.
knowing how, so we don't, we can minimize damage,
And I wasn't here for this presentation when he gave it, so I'm only filling in the little bits I know. He could probably,
We did
yeah.
one in Yelm, for, an apartment complex.
That one?
We did, that one, so that one, we had to have the 3 feet above the ridge line, so that's where that's ideal for you now, right?
Mhm.
People in there, that's your highest point, it's clear.
yeah, that actually provides us with a safety net with a foothold kind of
Yeah,
sliding down the roof,
yeah,
until you step on the panel and the glass, and then you slide.
yeah. No, but yeah, those ones you can stand on or use, like, what's ideal with steep roofs for us is we'll get up there and we'll get the rails in. And once the rails are in, you know, we're roped up and everything, but it makes life so much easier, because now we can stand on them. Or, you know, use them as a foothold when we're doing wiring and
Mhm.
the panels on. So with those ones, you can even stand on the panels and they won't come off, they're really in there, but.
You almost need a little mini Jaws of Life or something that you can just pop under the panels.
That's called a axe or a chainsaw.
Yeah, or just a jack, just jack it off.
5-foot bar.
But you wanna save the panels.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, same how it works.
Yeah.
They can be replaced.
That's true.
Yeah, they can.
Yeah.
And they're probably covered by the insurance that covered the fire.
We hope.
And that's just the reef.
The
Make
big
sure you
thing
break
on
every
these
one of
is, even if you've got the electricity shut off to the house, it almost speak directly to you now. And this is actually side story. The legislature's got a bill right now that would allow essentially stereo electricians to install solar. And I'm going like, oh my gosh, are you crazy? They're only certified up to 200 volts, or only 30 volts. And solar is 240 volts AC. On the DC side of things, it can be up to 600 volts. So there could be nothing connecting, and those wires can still be live to 600 volts. So that's almost the most dangerous thing for firefighters is what they're producing at any given time. DC wiring, conduit. I don't know what any of that stuff says. Everything you see should be labeled to forward. This is how you don't do something on the left side. And this is how you should do it on the right side, well, and down below. But, yeah, it's, the good installers are very good about labeling what's what and what it has and color coding and everything like that. So we're actually trying to get LNI to give solar wire its own color designation so that you know. But it's made in Washington. Switching over codes, consistent permitting. Yeah, most of it look the same.
So
Anyway,
you-
firefighter 101.
Thanks.
If you do the panels away from the house,
Yeah.
then do you do the wiring underground?
Usually. And that's, unless you're more than, what's the standard, 100 yards away is the maximum? Do you remember?
I don't know. Unless what were we gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say, I don't remember, my dad knows it, he has everything memorized, but there's an efficiency where if it's for every so many feet or yards away, we up the size of wiring.
Oh.
So that can increase cost a little bit.
We've
But-
gone up to 300 feet,
How far away Wald was?
Yeah.
So,
and yeah, we just increase the size of the wire, and there's no, you lose voltage over the span of wire.
So why does it cost less to mount it on the roof than it does the ground?
Excuse me?
Why does it cost less to mount it on the roof than
Because
the
the
ground?
mount is already up, and that's
Yeah.
the roof. We have to then go in and dig, dig trenches. We have to, rent a trencher, rent a dingo, which is just like a big, like corkscrew that, we have to dig out, 4 feet deep to put it in a pole mount and pour concrete, let it set for a week, and
more wiring around.
there's more wiring. Because we have to essentially build a new structure on the property to mount the system. So that's basically it's more time, materials. I mean, it's cheaper on labor, only that we don't have to get on a roof, but, not cheaper, easier for us, but that doesn't compare to the cost of putting in, a structure. Unless there's one already up, like, we've had a few jobs where someone put in a pole mount himself, and it's ready to go. He's been putting panels and run wire.
But they checked with us on the design side first.
Yeah.
But there's also, we've done it where the husband wanted a carport and the wife wanted solar, so they got a solar powered carport. Or the pergola, that's how we did that. It was just an expensive thing. So there's all kinds of ways to do it. Everyone has their own motivation. We kind of try and design it to what interests you in solar. If you're looking for like return on investment versus made in the U.S., we can help design for it. I survived. Yes.
It's not over yet. Question time. More
Yeah.
questions.
Any other questions? We've got a sign-up sheet if there's anybody that wants us to contact them or be added to our newsletter or anything like that. And I put out some flyers and stuff. So
And that's for surveys as well.
if you want us to,
Just tell them.
if you want us to come out to your home and do a site survey, check my home. If you want us to contact you about, say, firefighter workshop, check other. Please print clearly. Every now and then, it's hard to
What do you
read.
charge to print out the?
Not because you attended the workshop. I mean, I didn't do as good as my dad would do, but a lot of the site survey is just, answering your questions and stuff like that, so we kind of consider this half of it, so.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
So who drives the solar car?
It depends. Amazing story about pumping your tires up. It was only going 20 miles, shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, and finally we got it back and we had a flat tire. And it was amazing, 10 PSI made such a huge difference. My brother was actually driving it to college for a while.
Actually, high school.
High school and college when he was in running start. And now that he's moved out, it tends to be whoever needs it for whatever. The van and the truck tend to be at job sites, and then we'll just grab the electric car for coming to things like this.
I think it's 70 miles a charge, 80 miles a charge.
Minimum of 70 miles at like 40 miles an hour,
Yeah.
and it depends on.
And what's funny is, and it's opposite when you think of gas mileage, you get more driving around town than driving on the highway. Yeah.
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 So, where'd you get the batteries?
There's a place called
It was on.
Interstate Batteries.
On,
That-
Greater Kinney.
Oh, yeah.
is over, yeah, in Lacey, and we get all of our batteries through them.
Okay.
No, actually, for those, we got them at, for our solar batteries, we tend to get them through Interstate, but for the electric car, we got them from Cut Rate Auto.
Not batteries.
Shucks, that's good.